James Lupton for Pro Boxing Fans. Delighted to join today on Zoom with Kelly Pavlik. Kelly, how are you doing, sir?
Doing good. Can't complain.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining me today. Take me back to the beginning. I want to go into why you started boxing.
I was involved in a bunch of sports growing up. I played baseball, football. I got into martial arts a little bit. It wasn't for me. It was more of the standard martial arts. And then from there, my brothers boxed, and I kept begging my parents to let me go down to the gym with them. They wouldn't let me go. After a couple months of begging them to take me, they finally did. And I went in, I sparred, I got beat up actually my first time. And when I came home, they were kind of happy because they thought I would quit, that I didn't want to fight no more. And to their surprise, the next day I came home and grabbed my equipment and wanted to go to the gym. So
what was it about the sport that made you not want to quit? Like, so you got beat up the first time. What was it about boxing that dragged you back into the gym?
I believe that fighters are born different. You know what I mean? In all combat sports, this is just a totally different game than any other sport, I guess, to put it that way. And nobody could understand that unless they did it. But I don't know. I don't know. Probably the average person would have got their ass whooped and they would have never went back. You know what I mean? There was something about the one-on-one aspect and just the whole thing where you kind of know it's on you. There's no teammates to point the finger at. There's nobody to blame. There's nobody to congratulate when you win. So I kind of like that part of it.
Now, you was quite a successful amateur. When did you realise you was good at boxing?
So with that, again, with the other sports, when I started my first couple amateur fights, I was still playing football. I was still playing baseball. So my fights, I would say probably about from the age of 11 to 15 or 16, I only had about 40 fights, which in the amateurs is not a lot. It really ain't. And I may not even had that many. And I would say right after that, right about 16, I was going into some of these tournaments. And I say cold because, most kids are already in tournaments or fighting numerous club fights. And I didn't have that. So I went into these and I was able to hold my own very well. So right about there, I knew if I cut all the other things out and just really focused on boxing, that I could, that was a sport for me. And then where I really knew was right about, 16, 17, when I started winning. When I started winning the national tournaments.
Now, you're from Youngstown, Ohio, same place as Ray Mancini. Did he have any influence on you growing up?
No. I'm weird with that. I met Harry Arroyo, who was the IBF lightweight champion. It was cool. It was super cool to meet Harry Arroyo also. But growing up, I never really had anybody who, it's hard to explain, that I admire. Like, most fighters don't have posters of fighters on their wall. You would never have seen that for me, with any sport, really. I think I had a poster of Spud Webb slam dunking because he was so short. But other than that, no, I mean, I never really, I was a person that always liked learning the sport. So no matter who was in a gym, and if they were older than me or pro, I would kind of like watch what they do. I wouldn't copy their style, but I would copy some of the things they did. Oscar De La Hoya was another big one. So, I had never, and it's no knock towards any of them guys. It's just the fact that that's how I was. You know what I mean? I just didn't really, I wasn't that type. I don't know how to say it the right way, but I never had like a person who I've totally looked up to. I mean, I looked up to him, but not where I was like obsessed. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain.
You never aspired to be like one of these guys, essentially.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Talk to me a little bit about through your career. What are your favorite or best memories of your career?
And there's a lot. A lot of them. Obviously, you got Jermaine Taylor and Eliza Miranda and all the fights after winning the title. But there was a lot coming up that people didn't give me the credit on. There was guys that I went in and fought that I wasn't supposed to knock out, that were supposed to be a test. And not only did I knock them or beat them, but I demolished them and knocked them out. And I would say, going back to the obvious, guys like Edison Miranda. Well, we'll start right before Miranda. We'll go with Jose Luis Artucci. There was a guy that they thought was going to be a scrap on HBO. It was one of my first fights getting on there, and Artucci was a rugged guy, and I went in there and I knocked him out, probably knockout of the year candidate. And then from there, we went on to fight Edison Miranda, who was a absolute monster that nobody was picking me to win that fight. He was the most feared guy in the sport. And not only did I beat him, but I demolished him and knocked him out. And that was huge. And then, you go right into the Jermaine Taylor fight. And here's a guy who was the middleweight king. And not only did I beat him, but I knocked him out. So, like, pretty much all that 2007 was a hell of a run.
Did you have the mentality of you will fight anybody? You come at these guys where you were the underdog.
Yeah. Okay. So, and how I could back that up is when I fought Artucci, that was supposed to be the number one mandatory WBC eliminator, mandatory fight. So by rights, if I beat Artucci, I'm fighting for the title. I beat Artucci and I get done with the fight and I'm sitting at home and I'm expecting to get a phone call that we got the Jermaine Taylor fight. And they tell me, you got to fight Edison Miranda. Now, again, people are soon to forget that Edison Miranda at that time was like the most feared fighter in the sport. He was an unbelievable guy. So, yeah, I took that fight. There was no hesitation. There was no I was pissed because I thought I had the title fight. And then all of a sudden now you got to throw a guy like Edison Miranda in there. It kind of sucked, but we took it and we were confident. I was confident, and I went in there and did what I had to do.
You did get the Jermaine Taylor fight eventually. I believe in the build-up, Manny Stewart said he felt Taylor's going to knock you out. He felt it was an easy fight for him. Did the Edison Miranda fight give you a bit of added belief going into the Taylor fight?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I knew actually in 2005 that I should have been at the top. It took a lot longer for me to get there, and I was going through guys. I mean, I was doing more than what I was supposed to with the opposition that they put in front of me. Not many of the prospects was doing what I was doing at that time. So I knew I was ready. I'm kind of glad that it all panned out the way it did because I'm pretty realistic too. The Miranda fight and things like that gave me that experience and, to be in that atmosphere, even though it was not the main event, it was a co-main event, but that was huge. And I think that helped a lot too, though.
You mentioned that you felt like you should have been there a few years prior. Was there any frustration on your side for it coming?
Oh, absolutely. Let's be honest. I came up. I had an unbelievable knockout record and just in general. I was signed with Top Rank, a huge promotional company, and it still took me 7 years just to get on HBO. So it was pretty frustrating. And in boxing, the window's short. It's not a longevity sport. So in 7 years of fighting and staying undefeated and putting up what I did, that was pretty it was a tough thing to do.
How did you channel that frustration? Did that make you have more will and motivation to want to get these titles eventually?
Yeah. You always got that motivation when you're in that sport and you're considered one of the top guys, and you have a record of 20-0 with 18 knockouts. The motivation's there. It's just, and you're frustrated, but it's all how you channel it too. That's a big part of it. It never overwhelmed me. I never let it get to me to a point where it distracted me. I just, maybe I'm different. Maybe some other fighters are a little different. That would have bothered them, but me, I went in and took care of my business. I guess that's the best way to put it. My whole entire style, I wasn't one for talking. I wasn't one for ranting on, during fights or press conferences. I just like to go in and take care of business and move on to to the next one.
In terms of your retirement, I feel like you sort of retired on your terms. But do you look back and have any regrets on your retirement?
Absolutely not. People will go and say all the shit that they want to say. You know what I mean? You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you stick around and fight too long, you're punchy, you're no good, and nobody has any use at all for you at that point. If you retire too early, you had issues or this or that. You know, I was 40-2. That's 42 pro fights, and I fought almost 12 years. Guys like Floyd Mayweather, who turned pro 4 years before I did and retired 5 years after I did. He only had like 4 more fights than me total, you know, or even 8 more fights. I'm not sure. I don't know if he got to the 50-0, but if you count the Conor McGregor fight, so 49 fights, and I have 42. You know, that's not a big difference at all. And all the mirrors added on. No, I was glad I retired. You know, there was a lot of guys get fight into their 50s, and then you get a lot of guys like me who are done. You know, boxing, I loved it. Don't get me wrong, but it was more of a business. That was my calling, to go in there and be able to accomplish what I wanted to do, and that's win a world title and make the money on top of that. Most guys, when they win a world title, they're counting down the next big fights. And I can be dead honest with you. When I won the world title, I was counting down to retirement. I had plans with my family. I told my wife before I even won the title, you know, I didn't want to be in the sport much past 30 years old. It's not a longevity sport. My style wasn't made for me to fight into my mid 40s, you know. So the big part of that retirement, you know, another issue that kind of put the icing on the cake was when I went to California. I loved it. It was great to go out there. But, you know, we had the 3 fights, and they were kind of like lower tier fights. And then we had the opportunity to fight Andre Ward, and Andre Ward ended up getting hurt. That's when he had the shoulder surgery. And at that point, the Super 6 was going on. There was no like real meaningful fight out there. So, I mean, I was done at that point. And, you know, I was fortunate enough for all the speculations that are out there where I never had to throw a punch again. I moved on. You know, I got many investments. My time is consumed with things that I want to do at my time and on my time clock. So, yeah, that was it. I mean, I feel my retirement was, I wish more fighters would do it that way.
Have you ever flirted with the idea of a comeback?
No. You know, I was on the Joe Rogan show, which is huge. And, you know, at the time I had the itch. But even as I told Joe Rogan, it's an itch, you know, and there's a possibility of, you know, throwing it around. But I think in the back of my head, I knew I was never going to. And fighters get that, you know, and at that point, that was 2 years ago. So I was still only 6 years removed from the sport. But, you know, yeah, you're always going to get the itch. I mean, I fought since I was a young kid, and that was my life. But no, I mean, I moved on, and that itch could have been, I didn't do it, but I could have went to the gym and hit the bag for 3 or 4 rounds or hit the pads and been like, you know what? I don't want to do it no more. So, but I didn't even have to do that. You know, I just knew that I'm done with boxing. It's move on to another chapter. I have 2 fitness gyms right now. I'm in a situation of opening up a boxing gym. I have a charitable organization and many other things going on, a boxing app, a podcast. So, you know, my time's fulfilled, and I'm like kind of moving on to another chapter in boxing and in sports in general. So, you know, that's where it's at now. That keeps me occupied.
Before I come on to those topics here, in terms of the comebacks, there's people at the moment, Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, even De La Hoya, they're talking about making comebacks. Do you see why they would want to come back now?
No, I truly don't. Mike Tyson, if he wanted to come back and do a exhibition for charity, I think that's cool. I mean, the amount of money he could raise for that, and if he wanted to even keep some of it, which I don't think with his new business adventure that he even needs the money right now. He's doing very well for himself, but I don't agree with it. You know, everybody's seen Mike Tyson hit the punching pads, the hand mitts, and they were like, "Oh my God, he looks so good." we got to be realistic here. I mean, my fat ass could go and hit the pads right now after 8 years of being retired, and I'm going to look good. You know what I mean? Because it's what I did. You know, we know how to hit pads. It's totally different once you get somebody in there, a sparring partner, or, you know, during a fight, to look that way. Mike Tyson, he lost his last 2 fights 15, 16 years ago. It's not going to get better at 53. Can he still punch? Yeah. Would I want to get hit by one of his punches to this day? Absolutely not. But, you know, if we're being realistic, I don't know why these guys want to do it. Like De La Hoya. De La Hoya don't need the money. And I think it tarnishes some of the greatness that they accomplished during their career.
And finally, going on to what you're doing now, you've mentioned currently there's a couple of fitness gyms. Talk to me about you said you're looking into opening a boxing gym. What's going on there? Are you looking at coaching yourself, or?
Yeah, I'm working with a couple guys right now at my fitness gym. We're in the process with the boxing gym. There's just a lot of things going on right now, and like I said, I was fortunate to do things on my own time. One thing is I will not put myself into any situation where it feels like a job, and I mentioned that with my fitness gym. You know, I'm training a handful of people, and I know it sounds I sound stuck up when I say it, and I'm not really trying to, but you know, for a minute there, I was finding myself there 6 hours a day, you know, working with people and being at the gym and getting a workout in myself. And, I cut back on that big time because that's not, what I wanted to do. And, we're in a process of a lot of big things right now, going also. So, I do what I want. I do like working with some of these fighters. So I moved the schedule and I get some of these kids in, and I got a young pro fighter. That's fun with me, and I don't want to ruin anything that we got going or screw up one of their fights. If it comes to a point where I'm not going to train no more, I'll definitely give them a heads up and let them know so that way they can move on to somebody else or whatnot. But I feel like in the profession that I was in, that I don't really owe anybody anything, and I'm not obligated or to anybody. I'm just kind of helping out and out of the kindness of my heart. And, I work my ass off to be able to do what I want to do now. Boxing is literally blood, sweat, and tears. And, so that's kind of where it's at. I bounce around. Like I said, I have a podcast. I do it for fun. We get to travel to big fights, and, I'm cool to get credentialed by these promoters. Again, the fitness gym, and then the other fitness gym, and then the process of opening a boxing gym. I got bored and I did a fitness app, a boxing fitness app out of Naples, and we're still in the early stages of that. It's pretty cool. So I'm pretty busy. And then, of course, the afternoon I leave time. I got my kids are still fairly young, so I work with them too and have fun with them.
Talk to me about the podcast. I saw on social media recently, obviously Eddie Hearn's released his own podcast with the same title as yours, Kelly Pavlik's Punchline. What's your thoughts on that?
So first of all, I want to say, with my podcast, we have numerous people that are associated with it. I would say workers or contributors. We have 2 guys that do some of the material layout for the fight page and everything else. So they kind of jumped the gun without, my okay, and they kind of posted about it. I didn't think we should have jumped that quick on it. I am going to pursue it, though. I mean, I think it's kind of messed up. I don't know how all the copyright rules and laws work. That gets pretty deep, but I do know that they took my podcast. So it's kind of flattering, I guess, because they say they didn't know, but not only did they take the name, but the format is pretty much the same as ours too. You know what I mean? So it's I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to believe that Eddie Hearn, with his popularity and the people that he has working for him, didn't know that there was a podcast out there, especially one that's ran by a former, world champion. I kind of call bullshit on that one, because when we were doing our podcast, I had my people look into names that were out there, so we weren't taking anybody else's podcast, or their name or get into a copyright infringement or whatever else. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, it's flattering, but we'll get through it with that one. Believe me, and if I have to do whatever it takes on that, I will. You know, and I don't know if Eddie Hearn, with his busy schedule, would want to go through that. You know, with everything he's got going on, for a podcast that's just starting or that's not really generating any money. So,
With your podcast of it, could we see any feature down the line for yourself in potential punditry or commentary at all in boxing?
I would like to. I mean, I've looked into that. You know, as we were talking about with some of the things that I got going, I got some big things going that were real close to finalizing. I don't want to speak on it yet, but if that does come through, it's going to be hard to do commentating. Really is. I'll be really gone all the time, and whatever free time I got is going to want to be spent with my family. But commentating is still in my future. I would love to do it. I would love to be part of the fights, and if there is an opening, I think that would be kind of cool. If I can't get a commentating job and some of the other guys commentate, I don't know if it's just because people don't like me, but we'll see. Yeah, but that's something in the future that I'm still definitely interested in. So hopefully, one day I can get that gig.
Absolutely, and hopefully we get to see you and hear you on the screens as well. But Kelly Pavlik, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your time and speaking to pro boxing fans.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.